what is um the question you get asked the most in opposition of religion?
Hmm. The one I get the most, I would say, is probably science. That's the biggest one I hear, and that's the one that's probably the most frustrating. Like for example, one day I had this guy. He tried to set up a dilemma for me, and he said, he said, just think about it. If you were to pick between the Big Bang and God, which one would you pick? And I was just like, well, that presupposes that these two are in conflict. And I was like, I want you to realize that, like, the Big Bang was theorized by Christians. So, like, it came from a Belgian priest by the name of George Lemaitre, right? And George Lemaitre was the one that put together this idea. And when he put this together, he described that the universe had began as a cosmic egg. That was his words. And I can kind of shortly go over the Kalam cosmological argument in this video. Um, and it
Yeah.
just basically states that the universe had a beginning. I'm not gonna. I go over a lot of the premise one, premise two, conclusion, and I'll avoid that just because of how often I go over that as anybody that watches this content. But what's so fascinating is that it just basically states that the universe had a beginning. With our current scientific understanding, and if it's true that the universe had a beginning, which is the common held view of 13.8 billion years ago. So if space, time, and matter had a beginning 13.8 billion years ago, then the cause of space, time, and matter must be something that is spaceless, timeless, and non-material, because those things had a literal beginning. So you can branch this argument even deeper,
Hmm.
as you can say that not only is it a spaceless, timeless, non-material agent, it also would have to be something powerful, because only something powerful could create something out of nothing. And it would have to also be something personal because only personal agents can make a decision to go from nothing to something. So when looking at all of these attributes or these characteristics, if you like, we're getting dangerously close to what we call Christian theism. It's this is basically the Christian definition of God. As we see in the Old Testament, they describe God as the wind, and the reason they give it like this is not that, it basically is just trying to say that God is like an invisible, like another great verse used is Jesus is the image of the invisible God. So here there's stating right there that Jesus is, or that God is invisible, and stuff like that. And that's why the word is used for the wind. God is used as a wind in the Old Testament by the Hebrews.
Hmm.
But it's just contexts like that where we can really put this argument together. And this is the bare bones basic of this argument. And that's why I always say to think that the Big Bang somehow disproves God is really silly. Um, but it makes sense for
Well,
people that obviously may have not really
I,
looked deeply
and I
into
get
it.
that. The
For
way I
sure.
usually sway that argument is I
Yeah.
believe in the Big Bang Theory. I believe in God spoke and bang it happened.
Right.
Um, God is not just the God of the Hebrews and of Christianity. God is the God of space and time, and he proved it over and over
Yeah.
again. Um, how could God get two of every animal on a ship? God is the God of
Right.
space and time. Like,
Right.
you
Right.
want to you want to bring up science fiction? Think of it as the Tartarus, like from Doctor Who. That's God.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Um,
And let me switch these guns up a little bit. Daggum. Trying to
I
use some
don't.
MW2 weapons. Not working.
The one I hear the most is like if
Yeah.
God's well, the two I hear the most is one is if God exists, blah blah blah. So if God exists, why does He let bad things happen to good people?
Yep. That's a common one too. Yep.
So my biggest thing is God doesn't let bad things happen to bad people. Bad people do things to good people, and then also good people let bad things happen to good people.
Uh huh.
Like,
Yeah.
um, God did what He's going to do when it comes to intervening.
Right.
For the most part, I'm not talking about personal prayer,
Uh
but
huh.
we all have free will.
Sure.
If some dude decides to shoot you in the street, that dude might shoot you in the street. Now you can pray for protection. It is God's will of what's going to happen for that, but you never know if His
Right.
plans is for you to get shot in the street to motivate somebody else.
100%.
Um, and that's kind of hard sometimes because, like, I'm a new father. I have an 18-month-old baby.
Yeah, for
His
sure.
name is Gideon.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Gideon is one of my favorite people in the Bible. Not
Yeah,
only did
that's
Gid,
a dope way to do it for sure. I always find it
Gideon
awesome
showed
when people base it off of biblical ideas. I love it.
uh, Gideon didn't just take over nations, but he also tore down the high places of false gods.
For sure.
I just
Yep, terrific stuff. Yeah, and you're right. The problem of evil is another major thing that people try to say about this, about the existence of God, about like if there's a good God, why does He allow bad things to happen? And yeah, you've went over a good chunk of it. Yeah, you did a good job because it's a really simple answer. A lot of people make it more complicated than it has to be. Um, because for sure, the easiest way to go about it is like, obviously, it's against the will of God that like bad things happen in the sense that we speak of. But like at
yes.
the same time, that's the entire thing of free will. Like if it's true that like so like I can the whole point of free will is to show that God used free agents to either abuse the good that we all have in us, or that we can choose to follow that and actually be good people and do good things. C.S. Lewis is one of my favorite people that writes on this context.
Oh,
And
was it Screw Tape Letters? 100%.
oh yeah, that's an awesome book too, for sure. He kind of goes into that. Yeah, that book's about the demons and whatnot. That using them as the
Yeah.
patients. Yep. And that book's terrific. You could also refer to like Mere Christianity or The Problem of Pain. Either of those books are terrific too, in these ideas. And it is just beautiful how he puts it because he shows that like evil actually kind of proves that God does exist. It's the opposite. So like if you claim that evil exists, you actually are showing that God exists. And he does this by showing like if you believe that there is such a thing as actual evil, like it's objectively wrong to murder innocent people, and it's like look at like what the Hamas is doing. We could say
I
like
was about to say that.
yeah, that's funny. So it's terrific to where we can say use this as an example to show like this is objectively bad. This isn't my opinion that it's evil. And if it's true, then that means that if there is such a thing as objective codes that exist within the person, we can morally say that it's objectively, inherently evil for these people to be doing these things. And not just them, but just, you could apply this to basically all humans, that have done all of these kinds of things in the past too. And in doing so, it actually proves that there is a God. This argument, the objective morals, is another really good argument for the existence of God. So it all really for the atheist, no matter which argument they use that thinks works, it all falls back on to show that hey, it actually shows that it is true. So it's kind of it's interesting to see.
So that question comes from one person in my life, and I love him to death. And he's
Right.
a very intelligent person. And he throws out some stuff that stumps me for a while. Pray about it. I move through it.
Yeah.
The one that got me last time was,
Right.
uh,
Right.
can God lift? Can God create a
Oh yeah. Can
boulder
God? Right.
heavier than
Yep.
it can lift?
Right. Right.
And that is nothing but putting human limitations on a divine being. It doesn't work. That's a false analogy.
Yeah, they try to make it a paradox, and it's a false paradox. You're correct, because yeah, they're trying to say if he can't create one, then he's not all powerful. But if he can create it, then he's also not all powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I've done a video on that too. So yeah, really fun stuff for sure.
Well, I tell you what, I'm
Big.
definitely going to follow you after this because
Yeah, yeah.
you're my kind of dude. So
Hell yeah, dude. So it's great talking to you so far.
um,
Oh man.
the only one that bugs me and that kind of like still I can't get past it
Uh-huh.
is God an angry kid with his magnifying glass on ants?
Oh, what is it? This is an objection.
Yes. So God created man. God
Right.
created sin because God created man, and
Ah,
then he
so
put
the idea is that God created sin. Is that what you're saying too? That you believe that God may have made the sin of the humans, or
If God creates everything, then yes, God creates sin.
okay, I see where you're trying to come from.
Yeah, no,
I
I'm
can,
saying this is one thing that I have a hard time with, not something I'm
yeah,
like hardcore on.
absolutely, yeah. I could give a somewhat of an answer to see if this could help you, perhaps. Oh man, I must have scared that guy. Oh my goodness, this guy's chilling in there. But so like one way I would try to go about it is showing that just because God created humans doesn't mean that He created um the sin associated with the humans. So like for example, I'm a big basketball guy, so I give a lot of basketball analogies to help describe
Okay.
certain things. And for example, you could think of like somebody like James Naismith, who is the creator of basketball. Um, so he was the one that made like the little clothes basket, and he put it on a little um, wooden beam. You know what I mean? In this context, really, really interesting way. But the whole idea is like this: we none of us would say that James Naismith is responsible for Malice at the Palace. And for anybody that isn't aware of what the Malice at the Palace is, it's basically an event in basketball history in the NBA where NBA players were fighting fans, and uh, it was a really bad thing. Not only just fighting the team, like each other's teams were fighting, but that the fans were fighting the
Was
players
this
too.
in the
And
last like 5, 10 years?
it happened in 2004, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly. And like the way I'm using this analogy is to show it like this. Just because Naismith was the creator of basketball, none of us hold him accountable for the wrong actions of um, the players, because those players exist outside of James Naismith, and they use their free will wrongly. And likewise with us and God. So like God has created us with free will, and it's our wrongdoing that has abused our free will and whatnot. So that's a very short answer to that, I would say.